why do you believe that the normal emotional introspection work that's done in therapy is not necessarily the most effective way to deal with men's mental health? And what exactly do you mean when you talk about like men's mental health?
Sure. So men's mental health is different from women's mental health, just as men and women in general are different. Mental health services are generally designed in such a way to cater to the women's mindset, where we talk things out, we make incremental progress, and even if we don't make progress, it still feels good just to be able to vent and just to be able to get it all out. Men's mental health differs in that men tend to be more action oriented. They seek outcomes. They seek sort of something that is evidential, as in, if I've spent an hour with you in therapy, like what has that hour meant beyond just venting and getting words out there? Generally speaking, the mental health services tend to move very slowly. They still tend to move forward. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this industry myself.
Yes.
But it does progress forward. But oftentimes, it isn't to the satisfaction of many men when they look back on the therapy that they've received and they've been through. Many will say, "Well, it was such an incremental move forward that it might as well not have been a move at all." And so in my article, I talk about how important it is to, at minimum, acknowledge the differences between men and women, and understand that men, by definition, are different than women, and thus will need different things than women.
Yep, I agree with that. Now, when you say mental health, is it more, like bipolar, schizophrenic, or like depression, anxiety? Like, what specifically are we talking? Because, like, for you, since you're in this space, like, it can be really broad, right? So, like, what exactly do you mean when it comes down to this one specifically?
Well, that's a good point, and that's a good distinction to make because I'm speaking specifically about anxiety and depression,
Yeah.
not necessarily about schizophrenia because that's more of what a psychiatrist would do.
Hmm.
I'm talking more about in the realm of psychology and social work, which is my expertise.
Got it. Okay, great. Now, you also mentioned how men and women do express, possible mental health issues in like different ways, right? So, can you express how men and women do express, that kind of problem in their own ways? Because you mentioned how females tend to be more like they look for more support, and guys tend to be more aggressive, right? So, can you just go a bit deeper on that?
Yeah. So for men, it's actually kind of the extremes. Men, when they're dealing with something from a mental health perspective, they can get more aggressive, certainly,
Yeah.
which is usually what you see in movies where, a man gets fired from a job and all of a sudden comes home, throws glasses, throws plates, everything's broken, and punches holes in walls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The opposite can also be true, where a man might feel like, well, it's not appropriate for me to express my emotions. And so they will go into themselves. So, in many ways, men will express their need for mental health services and mental health intervention through silence, through not talking, through one word
Yeah.
answers. You ask me, how's your day going? I say, it's going good. And then I don't
Yeah.
ask you back how your day is going. You might see
Yeah.
that as being rude or disengaged, disassociated, when in reality, a man might be calling out for help and asking, Shaq, continue to push me. Like, keep asking me how I'm doing because I'm not doing well, but I don't have the will or the energy to tell you that right off the bat. I need you to poke.
Yeah. And yeah, that's something that you can see in like school shooters as well. Like they're always, like the main prototype is silent and then they become unbelievably violent,
Yeah.
right? So that's a huge problem. And also at the same time, you can see when guys handle problems, they tend to do it physically and fight. Girls tend to kind of use, gossip and like rumors to like, hurt someone's reputation, right? So you can see how that's being expressed in its way over there as well.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I find really interesting is like the biological differences in how men and women handle stress, right? So, can you go a bit deeper on that, in terms of handling stress? Because I think that's really important. Because if you don't understand that, then you're not going to be able to speak to men in the language that you have to speak to them if you really want to make progress with mental health.
Yeah. So, one biological difference or neurological difference would be specifically a man's desire to find a solution. Whenever
Mm,
presented with a problem, there's a feeling, that you get, just like, okay, so this is the problem. I need to understand it, so I'm listening for the purpose of solving it. But
Yeah.
as soon as I'm done listening to what the problem is, the next minute, I am on figuring out some sort of solution to that problem. Um, you know, it's not so much about good or bad, right? It's not like men are good, women are bad, or
Yeah.
vice
Yeah.
versa. It's just differences in thinking. Women are much better at sitting with a problem for days, if not weeks or
Mm.
months, and really analytically, slowly figuring everything out. And some would suggest that they might be better. Women might be better at figuring out solutions that last longer because they've put in so much thought. Whereas men are looking for an immediate solution, and there's a biological imperative to figure out a solution. Here's a problem, here's an emergency, and now I have to figure out an answer to that question.
Got it. Now, do you believe that's more biology or more of what we're told as kids, right? Because like that can be, two different things as well, right? Because oftentimes you're raised in a certain way. So, do you believe it's more biological or more like a societal thing?
That is the $1 million question.
Yeah, it
Right?
is. It is.
Because, there are so many experiments that are ongoing right now to figure out what does nurture mean and what does nature mean, what is biology and what is sociology. So
Mm.
we're in the process of figuring that out. I think depending on what political side you're on, you have answers already
Yeah, yeah,
without
yeah, yeah.
really understanding the evidence there. But in reality, from a scientific perspective, that question has not yet been answered.
Mm.
The right side of politics, or the conservative side of politics, would suggest that, well, it's biology, we know that it is. And it's like, well, there's some,
It's complicated.
it is. And the left
Yeah.
side of politics too would say, like, everything is
Hmm.
sociology, everything is a
Yeah.
social construct. And we need science now more than ever to figure out and mediate between these political spectrums. I think take science, or take politics out of science, would be a great a moniker to have.
Yeah, for sure. Now, how do you think that science can give us the answers? Because I mean, like, I think one way to look at it is, oftentimes masculine energy, like as you mentioned, is more action oriented, right? And then masculine energy is not just associated with guys, right? Because even girls can have more masculine, because like, some girls can have more of that energy within them, is right, and
Yeah.
they can be more action oriented. Feminine energy tends to be more about being and kind of like receiving, right? So I think that's also something to keep in mind. And then at the same time, what you're told growing up. I mean, that's changing. It's changing pretty dramatically. But yeah, that is complicated. So like you would say that we still don't know the answer to that question, right?
Yeah, actually, the way you phrased it paints the existence of the question, in that you don't have to be a biological male to
Yeah,
have masculine energy, or
absolutely.
a biological female to have feminine energy. And so, your personality can differ from your biological sex, and we're really learning that quite well now.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.